It's July, and we all know what that means. Shark Week. This year, it's July 26th through August 1st, but why wait when you could instead celebrate all month long for Shark and Ray Awareness Month? Shark and Ray Awareness Month is a wonderful opportunity to learn and get involved in conservation efforts to protect endangered marine species. And this July, we're focusing on oceanic species. These are sharks and rays that spend a majority of their time swimming the high seas, bouncing around international waters throughout their lifetimes. Why oceanic sharks? Because according to a 2021 report from the Global Shark Trends Project, there's been a 71% decline in their populations over the last 50 years, and 75% are now threatened with extinction.
So yeah, the report that you mentioned, the Oceanic Shark report, this came out in 2021, I think. And this refers to oceanic sharks are a particular kind of subgroup of the sharks and rays. It's about 31, 32 species, something like that, which have particularly suffered as a result of overfishing. Now, kind of if you broaden that out a bit, this report came out as part of what was called the Global Shark Trends Project, a huge amount of work that went on between about 2015 and 2021, 2022, which really tried to assess the state of all of the world's sharks and rays. And the overall picture for sharks and rays is that 1/3 of species, we talked about 1,200-ish species, and 1/3 of those are on the red list in classes threatened with extinction. So that's a big challenge for us to be able to deal with those. Now, of those sort of 400 odd species, 100% of the time, the reason for them being in those threatened categories is overfishing.
While the primary threat to shark and ray populations is overfishing, Paul mentioned secondary causes like climate change and habitat destruction are also threatening these species into extinction.
For example, lemon sharks are well known to use mangroves for their nursery ground. And so if you get mangroves destruction as part of, building lovely new hotels, then you have, the sharks are suffering from that as well. And then you have pollution effects as well. So habitat destruction, climate change, pollution effects, they're secondary, but the primary one is overfishing. When we talk about 71% decline, that's 71% decline in the abundance of their population. But the other piece of that is that 75% of those 32 species are classed as threatened with extinction. And just to hammer that home, in 1980, there was one of those species. Now there are 20. So there's a real big shift for those species, and that's something that we really need urgent action.
This is the primary mission of the AZA's SAFE program, which stands for Saving Animals from Extinction. This program works with all sorts of species and subspecies groups, including sharks and rays, but also things like pangolins, the African elephant, sea turtles, bonobo monkeys, and many, many more to save the most vulnerable wildlife species from extinction and protect them for future generations. There are roughly 50 SAFE programs operating right now around the world, and one key conservation initiative for these populations is improving the way that we fish, for us and for animals.
I would like to say that, from the Safe Shark and Ray program, we are in support of sustainable fisheries. So sustainably managed fisheries that have good data. But the overfishing that Paul is referring to is often unreported, unregulated, and unsustainable fishing of sharks. Some of that is bycatch, some of that is targeted fisheries. But one thing that I think is important is we've heard so much about the shark fin trade, and that it's shark finning and at SAFE, we really try to put some facts out there that currently the global meat trade for sharks and rays exceeds the demand for fins. So fish is a protein source for 1 in 7 people on the planet. People need protein to live, to survive, to eat. And so fish is an excellent source of protein. And that meat trade actually exceeds the demand for meat exceeds the demand for fins. And so we need to kind of shift our mentality from thinking about this is finning as the issue, but it's really not just finning. It's fishing for all parts of these animals to be used for food and or other cultural reasons as well.
As the meat trade is way more complex. The meat trade is, there's domestic consumption, there's movements of meat that's caught in one country to other countries. So there's this really kind of complex web of trade, which is really important to kind of understand that, that's what makes shark conservation so complex. You've got such a diversity of fisheries, you've got a diversity of trade, you've got a diversity of products, and that kind of just expands the complexity of the issue and of the solutions that are available to us. I suppose the other thing that's worth kind of coming back to your question was that sometimes people kind of see sharks as being separate to other types of fish, other things that are swimming around in the water, but they are, they're ultimately occupying the same niche. So they swim with fish, they get caught with fish, they are fished like fish, but they have quite a different life history in that their life history is more like a mammalian life history. They are slow to mature, they late to mature, slow to reproduce, and they reproduce at a very low rate. So when they're fished at kind of commercial levels, but they have this sort of inadequate way of reproducing to kind of compensate for that, that's when you run into problems, and that's when you get overfishing. Overfishing at its simplest is just fishing more than the ability of the population to reproduce and replenish itself. So that's a kind of key point about sharks. You have to understand the life history. Coming back to what I said earlier, that not all sharks are the same. So there are some sharks which can reproduce more quickly and therefore could be fished and sustain a managed fishery. There are other sharks which reproduce much more slowly, and therefore they find it very, very difficult to manage any kind of fishery. So it's really important to look at sharks, different species in different ways, understand their life history, understand the population structure, and then build a kind of conservation strategy based upon those individual characteristics. So yeah, it's a really complex picture. It's not just about the fishing, it's about the markets as well. It's about the trade. It's about the whole, everything from the sea to the plate. And that's the kind of understanding that we have to kind of wrestle with in trying to find solutions to these issues.